Terrorism returns to Israel with killings in Afula and Ashdod.
Jesse Jackson plays to the crowd in Hebron.
Israel pulling out of Gaza.
This plus blacklisting of Schindler's List, and JNN goes to the movies tonight on this edition of the JNN Evening News. I'm Caroline Greenberg.
And I'm Howard Barbanel, and here's what's happening. Junior high school students waiting for the bus home. On April 6th, the extremist Hamas terrorist group sent suicide bomber Raed Zakarna in a car loaded with explosives to the southern Galilee town of Afula, just several miles from the West Bank border. He was sent with a mission: kill Jews, and kill he did when his car exploded in a ball of flame, flying glass and shrapnel, which wounded another 44.
Witnesses to this explosion said, "We saw people torn to bits, some people without eyes, brains spilled on the road. We saw children without hair, and kids were burning like torches." Hamas, committed to Israel's destruction, gleefully claimed responsibility.
The day after, nearly half the town turned out to bury the dead in flag-draped coffins. As a consequence, demonstrations against the government and the Rabin-PLO deal took place throughout the country, with many expressing their shock and anger over continued Arab terrorism, such as the fatal killing of 32-year-old Yishai Gedassi and the wounding of 4 others at a bus stop the next day in Ashdod, and more stabbings at the Israel-Gaza border.
In stark contrast to the Israeli reaction to the Hebron incident, PLO chief Yasser Arafat has remained conspicuously silent about the new spate of Arab terror and the killings of Jewish civilians. The U.S. State Department has called on Arafat to speak out. Many in and out of Israel blame Prime Minister Rabin and Foreign Minister Peres for creating an atmosphere conducive to terrorists. Hamas, meanwhile, is publicly committed to more acts of violence.
Jesse Jackson took his traveling roadshow to Hebron, where he led local Arabs in a march and spoke behind a giant Palestinian flag in favor of the peace process. His message wasn't a big hit with the Arabs. In fact, rioting ensued, and Jackson himself was caught in the crossfire in his bus.
The Afula and Ashdod attacks came on Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Memorial Day, where Jews pay homage to their 6 million dead, in an event startling for even having taken place. Pope John Paul II joined Italy's president and chief rabbi for a Holocaust memorial service at the Vatican. The Pope has been especially forthright in recent weeks about recognizing Israel, commemorating the Holocaust, and making peace with the Jewish people.
Israeli opposition leader Benjamin Netanyahu has called for a suspension of talks with the PLO in the wake of recent terrorist attacks. In the Knesset, Netanyahu has said there's been more terrorism now after signing an agreement to end terrorism. In spite of this, the government continues its speedy gallop of appeasement and concessions and ongoing talks with the PLO. The PLO has still not repudiated its covenant calling for Israel's destruction.
The Israeli government is committed to unilaterally withdrawing its army and police from Jericho and Gaza. Moving vans were busy carting away as plans are made to turn installations over to the PLO. Conspicuous in Gaza is the shiny, spanking new Palestinian police station, ready for the PLO police. Jewish sentiment in the territory summed up their feelings this way.
We feel that nobody cares for us anymore.
All this is taking place amidst a backdrop of wild, violent Arab rioting in the territories.
Likud party chairman Benjamin Netanyahu offered a completely different take on how to make peace and on the choices available to Israelis.
The 3 prerequisites of the sovereign that are obvious. First, exclusive control of the border. Second, exclusive control of internal security. Third, exclusive control of foreign relations. That defines sovereignty across many, many lands. Any country that is sovereign controls its perimeter, controls security inside that perimeter, controls foreign relations outside that perimeter. All of these 3 have already been chipped away, even now at the Gaza-Jericho stage. But what I'm suggesting, unlike the government that is leading directly, as some of its members already admit, to a PLO state, what I'm suggesting is autonomy. Israel controls security, Israel controls sovereignty. The Palestinians run their daily lives with democratically elected councils. And the Arabs of Judea and Samaria, of course, maintain their Jordanian citizenship as they do now. There's no reason why they can't continue in this arrangement, as is common among many nations. You have Canadians living in the United States and voting in the national institutions of Canada. You have Americans living in Canada and voting in the national institutions of the United States. there is a different way. The difference in the front facing the Palestinians is a difference of security and of patrimony. The difference of the Golan Heights is the difference in security and to some extent in patrimony too, because we have historical claims, powerful historical claims to the Golan Heights. But I think that the best summation of the difference in our concept of peace was given 70 years ago by the one of the two founding fathers of Zionism, by Max Nordau, who perhaps crystallized best one of the two aspects that I've been talking about here, which is the aspect of the relationship between peace and deterrence. He described an experiment, a very famous experiment by a German scientist called Mobius, who took two fish into an aquarium. One, a large fish, a predator, a pike, and a much smaller fish, which was the prey. And he separated these two fish with a transparent glass partition. And the big fish, of course, saw the little fish through the glass and pounced and hit the glass and recoiled, and pounced again and hit the glass and recoiled, and then did this 3 times and 4 times and many, many times. Repeatedly pounced and recoiled until Mobius noticed that the big fish stopped. So he did one other thing. He removed the glass container, or the glass partition. And the big fish stayed on his side of the aquarium, and the little fish stayed on his side. Now, essentially, if you want to see the way we have been moving to peace between us and the Arabs, that is the identical process that has taken place. In 1948, we've had 5 Arab armies attack us. In 67, 3. In 72, or 73, I should say, 2. In 82, when we went to clean out the PLO nest in Lebanon, 1, Syria. And in 91, I suppose I'd call the effort of Iraq in that war the effort of a half country. So we had 5, 3, 2, 1, 1/2. Why did that happen? It didn't happen because Hussein fell in love with Golda Meir. It happened not because Sadat became a Zionist. It happened because they kept on hitting the glass partition. And what this government wants to do is to remove that glass partition, our territorial defenses, to remove it, not only to remove the heartland of the Jewish homeland from the Jewish state, which would be a terrible surgery in its own, but it would be even in a country that did not have the historical and religious and emotional association that we have, and a country cannot live with such roots, without such roots. Even if a country did not have it, to remove that glass partition, when we are surrounded as we are by predators, by unreformed dictatorships, and no one will claim, including this government, that the PLO is democratic, that Syria is democratic, although I must say that Assad must be a terrific campaigner because he gets 99.9888% of the vote. Nobody claims that. To make that mistake would be to invite the certainty of repeated attacks and the certainty of calamity. I want peace, and therefore I oppose this process and seek a peace that is defensible. And if this question merits a discussion here in this hall, it certainly merits a decision by the Israeli people when they have time to decide. What I want the government to do and what I call on it to do is to have elections right now and have the people decide. Let the people decide between 2 kinds of peace, between Likud and labor, between autonomy and a Palestinian state, between peace on the Golan and what I'm convinced will be war without it, between the defense of Israel entrusted to the IDF and the defense of the Jewish people entrusted to Yasser Arafat's army of terrorists and the value of his commitments. I think that is a worthwhile subject not only for an afternoon discussion, but for the earliest possible national elections. And I thank you for your attention.
A few weeks ago, the UN Security Council, unopposed by the U.S. or Israel, passed a resolution condemning the Hebron massacre and calling Jerusalem Israel's capital, occupied Arab territory. This took place despite 82 senators urging the U.S. to veto the resolution. The Rabin government didn't oppose the resolution to get peace talks back on track. Here to talk about this and the current Mideast situation is Robert Weintraub, Vice President of Likud USA. Mr. Weintraub, what is your take on the impacts of the UN resolution and its ramifications for Jerusalem and Israel's capital?
Well, this is a very sad day for Israel because there were 83 U.S. senators who signed a petition arguing that the U.S. should veto that resolution, and the present government told them, don't bother, let's let it go through. Now, this means that Jerusalem is now negotiable, and the Arabs are insistent that Jerusalem is the capital of Palestine, the Arab state. I don't know any place in the world where there are two countries, or two, whatever you call the Arab entity or whatever, that share the same capital. So it's very chancy and very, I fear, very difficult times are ahead for Israel as far as Jerusalem is concerned.
Insofar as terrorism is concerned, where is it headed? What can Israel expect? What can world Jewry expect, especially in light of the killings on the Brooklyn Bridge and so forth?
History has shown that when Jews are weak or perceived as weak in the Middle East and elsewhere, violence increases. We predicted this. I hate to say it. We predicted that as a result of the September agreement, violence would increase, not decrease, and that's what's happened. There have been more Jews killed in the 6 months since September 15th than were killed in the prior year or the last year of the Likud is in power, when Likud was in power.
Okay. Is Arafat really a viable partner for peace?
Arafat has never kept any agreement he's made. And this is true with countries like Syria or with the factions in Lebanon, as well as with Israel. The ambassador to Israel let the cat out of the bag. He was asked by George Will on the Brinkley show a few weeks ago, what is holding up the conclusion of phase 1 of the peace process? And he said, well, Arafat keeps raising his demands. So they have a very slippery guy to deal with.
Are the Arabs changing their mindsets for real peace?
Well, they have a different definition of peace. They feel that peace is something that advances their interests constantly. Every agreement they've ever made is just the beginning of negotiating more favorable terms. And this is what's happening now.
Why is this of concern to American Jews, and what, if anything, can or should American Jews be doing about it?
I believe the security of American Jews, given the history of anti-Semitism in the Western world and also the Muslim world, is very closely linked to what happens in Israel. It's not only the physical security, but the psychological security. After what's happened to Jews over the past 100 or so years, we need a country that's strong, and that's a Jewish country. And to me, it's very scary to see this present government giving away the security of Israel.
Okay. Now I have one final question for you, Mr. Weintraub. What would Likud be doing differently if it were in power today?
People ask, what was your policy for peace? The way to peace, in our view, is to settle the territories. Our plan was to put 500,000 Jews in Judea and Samaria over the next 4 or 5 years. At that point, the whole issue of land for peace would be off the table. The parties, both Arabs and Jews, would have to find a way of living together. To withdraw from Judea and Samaria, as this government proposes to do, means that Israel has no defensible border on the Eastern Front, and that's very dangerous.
Thank you, Mr. Weintraub, so much for being with us tonight. You know, writing recently in the New York Times, A.M. Rosenthal tied Yasser Arafat's turning his back on the slaughter of bus passengers in Israel to other Islamic attitudes towards Jewish deaths. Steven Spielberg's Academy Award-winning Schindler's List, the heroic story of how one German saved over 1,200 Jewish lives, amidst the hell of the Holocaust, has been banned in most every Arab country as being either obscene, pro-Jewish, anti-German, or all three. Spielberg called the bans disgraceful and said the bannings had their roots in anti-Semitism and was certainly an attack against Jews. Rosenthal contends that peace will only really come when Islamic leaders try to bring Arab minds and souls into some harmony with the Jews, or at the very least the absence of hate. Along those lines, we go to Caroline, who has a review of a new film that delves into the banality of evil. Caroline?
That's right, Howard. Now here's a film about one of the divas of Nazi cinematography. The Wonderful, Horrible Life of Leni Riefenstahl is a documentary form with subtitles. The film takes you through the career of Miss Riefenstahl, from her days as an actress to the films she directed, most notably the definitive Third Reich propaganda film, The Triumph of the Will, and another one on the 1936 Berlin Olympics, Olympia. Filmed in 1934, The Triumph of the Will, which glorifies Hitler and the Nazis, brought Riefenstahl international acclaim at a time as a filmmaker. This shows the horrible Riefenstahl. After the war, her work for the Nazis brought much controversy, as many contend that Riefenstahl wasn't simply commissioned to make the film, but was also affiliated with the Nazis. Some contend she was an intimate of Hitler and Joseph Goebbels. Here's what she had to say in a clip from the film.
Ja, aber wenn man Goebbels Tagebücher aus der Zeit von Anfang 33 liest, hat man den Eindruck, dass sie bei Hitler und bei ihm zu Hause ein- und ausgingen wie gute Bekannte.
Also diese müssen Sie mir mal vorlegen. Das habe ich noch nie gelesen. Kein einzigen Satz, aus dem hervorgeht, dass ich da ein- und ausgehe. Das ist reine Fantasie.
Saw Leni Riefenstahl this afternoon, suggested a film about Hitler to her. She was enthusiastic. In the evening, to Madame Butterfly with Magda and Leni.
Und Anfang 33 war ich überhaupt nicht bei ihm. Nie, hat er auch nichts gesagt.
Drove back with Hitler in the evening. Later, at home, Philipp von Hessen and Leni Riefenstahl called very nice.
Ich war nicht einmal, auch nicht in Schwanwerder, wo alle da waren. Sämtliche, die heute noch leben. Ich war nicht eingeladen, ich war nicht mal eingeladen.
Saw a film with Hitler starring Hans Albers. Terrible rubbish. Gerda, Maria and Leni Riefenstahl were there. 3 beautiful women.
Ich bin so
Ja, können wir mal
aufgeregt,
eine Pause machen?
was Sie da gesagt haben, das ist ja
Ja, ich kann
unglaublich.
es Ihnen zeigen.
Ich habe gesellschaftlich, einer aus den Tagebüchern steht drin, das steht doch überhaupt nicht drin, das ist doch nicht wahr, Herr Müller.
Ich kann Ihnen aber... Ich
Ja, Sie können es mir zeigen, bitte zeigen Sie mir, wo das drin steht, dass ich gesellschaftlich da ein- und ausgegangen bin.
Her wartime acts were so questioned that her career suffered dramatically. Yet, as we see in this clip from the film, how Riefenstahl clearly, even today, can get excited over her Nazi opus.
Und jetzt kommt gleich wieder etwas Interessantes. Das ist die Wirkung der Fahrstuhlaufnahme. Und jetzt schwenkt die Kamera auf die eine Seite, nach rechts, und dann schwenkt die Kamera auf die andere Seite nach links. Und diese beiden Einstellungen ergeben die Form eines Kreises und wirken dadurch sehr gewaltig. Hier überschneiden sich die Fahnenreihen. Das war möglich durch die verschiedenen Kameraeinstellungen. Und im Schnitt her ist es etwas tänzerisch nach einem Rhythmus gemacht, genau nach der Musik geschnitten. Das sind die Fahnen vom Stahlhelm. Es gab damals verschiedene Formationen, die da vorbeimarschiert sind. Die Veranstaltung war die vom Luther. Ist auch interessant, wie die Treppen da runtergehen.
Today, Triumph of the Will remains under lock and key in Germany. People are still afraid to examine the film seriously.
Ganz genau nach der Marschmusik.
Can a film really be that dangerous? Or is it too vivid a reminder of something that many would prefer to forget?
Interessant.
Years later, she took on other projects such as picture taking in Africa and underwater filmmaking. This 3-hour and 15-minute film tells us everything you wanted to know about her life and career. The documentary techniques used here are wonderful and captivating. I also found the film very intriguing. This is a must-see for students of the Holocaust, German history, and cinematography. This film is now playing in New York at the Film Forum. Now, Howard, you have a review of another film from this place and time.
Oh, that's right, Caroline. There's just no shortage of cheerful, happy, upbeat movies on our show tonight. I had the privilege of seeing Yolanda Zauberman's Ivan and Abraham, and this is the poignant story of two boys, one Jewish and one Polish, in 1930s Poland. And Zauberman displays her prior documentary talents as she graphically transports us magically into the now destroyed shtetl life of pre-war Poland, replete with Jewish folklore, warmth, and the dust, dismay, depravity, and superstitions that permeated the life of the Jewish and Polish peasantry in those days. Shot in black and white, with most of the dialogue in Yiddish with subtitles, this is a film that makes you care, makes you laugh, and makes you mourn. Abraham and Ivan run away from home and encounter many adventures in their travels. Typical among them is their meeting Ivan's cousin and her relating the blood libel accusation, as we now see in this clip.
Вот. Я права. Не бойся, свинин там нет. Они все поверили, что ты цыган. Но я-то знаю, что ты жид. Хотя ты тебя их ни разу и не видела. Говорят, земли раньше не было. А была одна вода. И Бог плавал по ней на лодке. И вот однажды слышит он из моря голос. Возьми меня с собой. Это был дьявол. Тогда Бог помог ему подняться в лодку. А дьявол говорит, почему тебе не создать твердь? Бог бросил горсточку песку и создал островочек. Но такой маленький, что поместились на нем только Бог да дьявол. Ночью, пока Бог спал, решил дьявол от него избавиться. И давай его в море пихать. Пихает в левую сторону. А земля по телам Господа все растет и растет. Так был создан Запад. Да стал он его пихать в правую сторону. И получился Восток. Стал пихать вперед, и получился юг. Назад, и получился север. Вот откуда взялся наш мир. Вы, евреи, дети дьявола. Вам нужно, чтобы земля росла. Но вы пьете нашу кровь. У нас в церкви даже картина есть. На ней нарисовано, как евреи убивают христианских детей.
Не пойду я. Эти ваши баки вот где уже сидят. Небось, эту картину не сам Боженька малевал.
Здравствуйте.
Ivan and Abraham, much like Schindler's List and the Riefenstahl film, provide a window to a world of yesterdays, dreams and ashes that once was the world's largest Jewish community in Poland. Now playing at Lincoln Plaza Cinemas, this is a worthy first dramatic effort on the part of Zauberman and well worth seeing.
Now here's Howard and I from a prior program with information on a very special trip to Israel.
On July 13th, Israel is slated to implement the Rabin-Arafat agreement. You have an opportunity prior to that to visit Israel and see everything firsthand.
The Likud Young Leadership is sponsoring a summer mission to Israel from June 26th to July 7th. There will be extensive touring of Judea and Samaria and visits to the Jewish communities there. The tour will also take you to the Golan, the Galilee, an extended visit in Jerusalem including top-level meetings, receptions, and briefings by Likud leaders such as Benjamin Netanyahu, Jerusalem Mayor Ehud Olmert, members of Knesset Benjamin Begin, Ron Nachman, and more.
The trip will visit Masada, the Dead Sea, the Negev, and Eilat. There will be tours of army bases and Israel's most exciting city, Tel Aviv.
This is a terrific trip for young people visiting Israel for the first time, and there's plenty of behind-the-scenes stuff to keep veteran visitors intrigued. For more information about the Young Leadership Mission, call Likud at 212-447-7887. That's 447-7887.
Well, here we are back. We changed our clothes really quickly, and frankly, we thought
my hair.
we thought we'd save some editing time by running that item from a previous show, and
We hope you found this show informative and enlightening.
on behalf of myself and for JNN, we thank you for allowing us to share a piece of our world with yours, and wishing you all the best. I'm Howard Barbanel,
And I'm Caroline Greenberg.
and have a good night.
הבית שלי, הדרך שלי, הליכוד זה נכון. העתיד שלי, הביטחון שלי, הליכוד זה נכון. בדרך שלנו נביא השלום, בלי העלייה, הגשמת החלום, כולנו היחד.